All right, so now we're ready to add our next triangle. And to do that, I'm going to turn my work again. I'm going to start with the triangle facing off to the left. And I'm going to get my new color of yarn and get ready to join it right here in my chain one space that I made at the end of my first row when I made my first triangle. So I'm going to insert my hook into the chain one space, join with a slip stitch, like so. And then I'm going to go ahead and chain one to start my first row. After I've made the chain one, I make one single crochet into the same chain one space. And then my next step is to make a slip stitch into the row above. So if you look closely at the row above, you can see the two single crochets worked right adjacent to each other. I'm actually going to slip stitch right into the middle of this first single crochet, so kind of working into the side of it. So I'm going to insert my hook between the two legs of the single crochet and go ahead and make a slip stitch. And this is how I'm going to end up joining my second triangle to my first triangle as I go along. After I make my slip stitch, I'm going to chain two and turn my work. And now I'm ready to make my second row. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and it looks like I have two stitches here, but really what I have is one single crochet and one slip stitch. So for my second row, again, I'm also going to have one single crochet. I'm just going to work that into the chain one space at the end of my first row here, right there. I'm going to work my single crochet and then again chain one and turn. Now at first it might look like this triangle is sort of coming off at a diagonal, but it'll start to get pulled in as I'm working and everything will look the way it's supposed to. So now I'm ready for my first increase. And in this increase, I'm going to work all of the increases into the chain two that I've made after my slip stitch. To work an increase, I work one single crochet, chain one, and one single crochet into the same chain space. And now I'm ready to make my next slip stitch. So again, I go up a row and I work my slip stitch into the side of the single crochet that's on the end. Insert my hook, work my slip stitch, and then chain two. And now I'll just keep going. Now in this row of the triangle, I'm going to have two single crochets. And the first one is going to be worked right into the chain one space between the two single crochets that I just made on the previous row. Sometimes the space can be a little bit hard to find. You have to know what the structure of the stitches look like to get it into the correct space. So that's going to go, if you can see here, I have two legs of a single crochet here and two legs of a single crochet here. So basically I want to put my hook right in between those two sets of two to make my first stitch. So I make my single crochet, chain one, and then make my next one again into the chain one space at the end of the row. And now I'm just going to keep working forward in this way. Chain one, and turn. Make sure my yarn is behind my hook. Now my first single crochet goes into the first chain one space. Chain one. And now I'm ready for my next increase, which again will happen in my chain two space right here. So I make my first single crochet, chain one, my next single crochet, and now I'm ready to work my slip stitch. To make sure I'm working the slip stitch into the correct row, like I said, you're always going to be working that into the side of a single crochet and not into a chain 2 space. So you can see how the chain 2 spaces on the rows make a little kind of bump, whereas the 2 adjacent single crochets do not. So I want to be sure to avoid the chain 2 space and work my slip stitch into the side of the single crochet. So I work my next slip stitch, chain 2, and continue on. I'll show you where one more of my initial single crochets works here, and then I'll go ahead and finish up the rest on my own. So here again I have my first 2 single crochets of the previous round, 2 legs of one right there, 2 legs of the other on the other side. I'm going to insert my hook right in between those 2 sets, make my first single crochet, chain 1, look in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, and work into the chain 1 space at the end of the previous row. So it's a little tight. Okay. So I will keep working in this manner, kind of untangle myself here, until I get all the way up to the top. So my triangle will fill in all the way across the top in this manner. So I'll break the video now, and then I'll show you what it looks like at the very end. Be back soon. Here I am back, having finished my second triangle, and I can show you here how the 2 triangles fit together really nicely. On the one side, the join will look like kind of a set of V's, and on the other side, it looks like just almost like the triangles were stitched together. But there's no stitching in this scarf because sewing is basically my nemesis, so I tried to avoid it whenever possible. You might notice that I've changed colors here on my last 2 rows of my triangle, and the only reason for that is because I ran out of one yarn color. But given that this is a scrappy scarf, I figure that's just fine. There's one last thing I want to show you here before I sign off on this video, and that's how to carry the yarn up the side if I'm working a section of stripes. So what I've done here is I've made 2 rows in my first stripe color, the yellow, and I'm going to show you how I carry the yarn. So again, I have fewer ends to weave in altogether, because weaving in ends along with sewing is my other nemesis. So I'm ready to switch colors here. I'm going to join my cream color yarn in the same way that I do all of my other joins. And I'm going to continue working forward here. Things are getting a little untidy. Could have sewn those ends in the middle, but I elected not to yet. So I'm going to keep going, and in all of the stripe sections I work 2 rows in alternating colors, and that lets me keep all of my carries on one side so that so that I have much less sewing to do when all is said and done. So I'm going to work my next color row across just like usual and keep on going. It's funny, I think that making these videos has taken me more time than it has to make the entire scarf all together. And that's good news for you, because that means it's a quick project, especially if you're working it up in a heavier weight yarn. While I've used cotton for this particular sample, I actually think the scarf would work out better in an acrylic or a wool, something with a little more give to it. I just happened to use cotton because that's what I had available in my stash in the colors that I wanted. And now that I'm hearing myself talking, I think I might have mentioned that earlier in the video. But I've actually made this over the course of a couple of days, so now I'm starting to forget what I've said. All right, so now I'm working back my second row in my second color, second stripe color. And When I get to the end, I will show you how to carry the yarn. When you use this method, you can see the yarn coming up the side of the work, but at a distance, you'll never be able to notice it. And that makes things, again, a lot easier when all is said and done. That's how I like to think about things in projects in general. If I can't see it from a distance, it's probably not that terrible of a thing to have in a project. All right, so now I'm almost to the end. I'm gonna work my last few stitches here. Now I'll work my last stitch of the row into the chain one space and leave that last stitch unfinished. Let me grab my other yarn from over here. Now you can see here's my working yarn from my other stripe color. I have two strands of working yarn here. So all I'm gonna do is pull my new color up to the height of my last stitch of my last row, yarn over just like I would in any other color change, and then keep going. And as I work, you'll see that I'll have a carry up the side of the work. So I'll just work a handful of stitches here and show you a little bit about what this looks like on the end. So now you can see I have all of these loose ends that I still have to weave in, so you can ignore those. But here you can see I just have that yarn carried up the side. I can come back to an earlier section of the scarf to show you what it looks like without all the ends. So here's the black and white, or dark gray and white section of the scarf. And you can see the carries along the side, on one side. You don't see them on the other side. But if I look at this as a whole, to me it's nothing that stands out all that much. So that's all I have for the tutorial videos for the Happy Scrappy Scarf. I hope you have a fun time coming up with your own color combinations and pattern combinations, and I can't wait to see what you've made. Be sure to tag your makes with hashtag Happy Scrappy Scarf on social media, and then we can all enjoy each other's work. Take care.